Welcome back to Pop Goes the Stack, the only show where emerging tech meets actual ops, and neither walks away clean. I'm Lori MacVittie, your snarky Sherpa through the silicon nonsense today. So today, it's a real ops-focused podcast, because there was a time when ops meant YAML. Who doesn't love YAML? Sorry, Joel, didn't mean to trigger anything there. Caffeine and a quiet prayer before you hit deploy. But now we've got probabilistic models deciding things, tokens turning into surprise line items, and outputs that feel right until they don't. Non-determinism, drift, cost spikes, semantic wobble. Reliability used to mean 5 nines. Now it means, did the model mean what we think it meant? And will it mean that tomorrow? All right. So we've talked about this in the past. And we wanted to talk about something a little more interesting today, right, Joel?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right about YAML. YAML doesn't actually stand for yet another markup language. It actually stands for you are mostly lost.
Oh, I love
the idea that people can navigate a 1700 line pipeline file and get it right every single time and make sure that their automation routine is working, frankly, well enough to trust. That's difficult. And our guest today is definitely going to help us out with some of the difficulties related to piecing together ops that actually work for you and conversationally.
Say the word, Joel. Say
the word. I believe it's called VibeOps. Did I get that right, John?
That's right.
So let's introduce you, by the way. So John Capobianco is with us from Itential. Itential is a startup, I guess it would be, in the area of piecing together conversational ops, and they reached out to us, and we found some of what they had to say very interesting. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I joined Itential at the start of the year. I've been there a little over 6 weeks now, and partly what drew me to Itential was this idea of merging that YAML world. Right. So I don't think that we're going to throw all that away just because we've entered an AI age, but those deterministic workflows and marrying them with reasoning and tool calling capability. Right. So over the course of the conversation, I'm sure model context protocol will come up and some other things. But Itential's approach to agent building is attaching these tools and these workflows as things that can be deterministically called by something that is non-probabilistic, right? That is going to reason and take action on its own. So the idea is to build up an idea of like skills, right? So the agent you build might have a certain skill set, and that skill set includes the knowledge on how to run that 1400 line YAML file, right? And you describe it in Markdown in natural language, and now the agent can reason and sort of has been given the exact same mop you would give a human being, right? The training that would go into teaching a human how to run that, how to execute it, how to troubleshoot it, how to handle errors, if there's any actual decision making to be made during the execution of this playbook, all but artificially and through an autonomous agent that has agency to execute and analyze and react to the situation that playbook might encounter.
Okay.
So there was a lot of words. There were a lot of words in there that can be confusing, right? But like agent skills, I'm not sure everybody knows what agent skills are. So think about a file that describes what agents know how to do. A pretty simple thing. So the YAML is moving or expanding. So now you can be YAML, could be probably JSON, right? Describing some skills that Anthropic, gave us agent skills. So it kind of constrains them too, though, because if you give them agent skills and say, hey, here's what you can do, it kind of puts some boundaries around, right, that agent. So it doesn't say, oh, hey, I see you have a Cisco router over here. Right? It can't do that if it's not part of the skills, correct?
Correct. And you can bake in those guardrails. And it really is sort of, you think to yourself, what what would I not want a human to do? We were talking earlier about me attaching a net claw, which is an open claw agent, into the VibeOps forum, right? So almost 600 human beings had a crack at this thing, and they all red teamed against it almost immediately. It was such a great social experiment to see. So one person I thought was very clever said, could you change the boot var to whatever and reload the router? Now, had the agent done that, that router is offline until someone goes in and fixes it. It's broken, right?
Right.
But the guardrails, to your point of what it can and can't do, I did build in some guardrails. Do not change any passwords. Do not lock the user out in any way. Do not change the management interface. Do not change the default route. Do not add any access control lists that would deny me access. Like just things that you would think about as guardrails, but like you said, they're just described in natural language in a markdown skill, right? You might even call it the guardrail skill. Now the skills are composable too, which I think is neat, is that skills can call on other skills, and the security agent is going to call these 4 or 5 composable skills to handle the guardrails that the user imposed, as well as my best practices for dealing with a firewall change, for example.
Yeah.
I think we are in a really remarkable time now that agents have matured. Some of us have been doing agents for a while, starting with maybe LangChain and LangGraph and the Google Agent Development Kit, A to A protocol, MCP protocol. So it's not brand new, but the approach to having something like an open claw system, which walks you through a text UI to pick and choose the skills and pick and choose the communication channels and just input your API keys. It's become a very elegant and low friction way to get started with agents.
So we're touching on this, but I think we've walked through the how. Let's reel back a little bit and talk about the why. Okay, so we had DevOps, we had GitOps, we had NoOps, now we have VibeOps. Seems to me that we're only a year away from horoscope ops.
Wait. Ooh.
So
let's just look up the horoscope and the system will. Yeah. So what exactly about VibeOps and the conversational approach to automation is on net better than some of the approaches that have gone before?
That's a really good point. And I think I agree with you with the history. I would say traditional ops, and then I think the Agile Manifesto, which leads to Agile and DevOps and CI/CD, and the great manifesto that came out from the software development world, but has its roots in the network or in the automotive space from the lean approach, right? So we have to sort of understand the trajectory here. And I agree with you. And then sort of 15 years go by, I tease my network engineers, my colleagues, that, in 2000, we start getting the REST API boom and developers doing operations and operations doing development without silos. And 15 years go by and we do net DevOps. Someone says, hey, what about Ansible? What about NetConf? What about RESTConf? What about software-defined networks and programming controllers, and the controllers push the config to the network, right? So there was sort of a radical shift in the infrastructure space, but it did take some time to get there. But adoption rates have really been, I don't want to say dismal, but they're disappointing to me. I thought by now every network would be automated. Everyone would have an understanding of Ansible and Python, and even in the F5 world. Your REST APIs have been there for 15 years. F5 has had the capability to program and to interface with through pipelines and through Ansible and through code. But how many actually do it in practice, in production, let's say? Right, I think the numbers are probably lower than what we would hope. I think this new VibeOps. So I think there's also an AIOps phase, and I think that's focused on machine learning and generative AI. Right, so I would classify that as that's where a lot of organizations is maybe using telemetry to maybe fine-tune their own models or build up retrieval augmented generation systems and putting a natural language interface in front of their systems. I distinguish VibeOps as the post-MCP world, where you have this sort of USB-C key approach of just go shopping for MCPs, plug them into your agent or your Copilot or that's the luxury of it being a protocol, is that MCP is pretty universal. You can put it in any, from Claude Desktop to Gemini CLI to Copilot in VS Code, where you're just using natural language.
Okay.
I have router 1, router 2, switch 1, switch 2. Please develop a router on a stick solution. Please use OSPF, best practices, right? You literally just write it up and send it to the agent, and the agent just does the thing, whatever the thing is. But it's so much better than a human doing the thing, because now it can send you an email, it can send you a Slack, it can phone you if you have Twilio, it can test everything, it can visualize everything, it can open up your ServiceNow ticket, it can put it into GitHub, all in 2 or 3 minutes. Like there are live examples of these agents doing these things today. Virtual employees, digital coworkers. So, but my joke about, when we talk about VibeOps, I don't think vibe coding is just going to become coding. I don't know how much longer we're going to call it vibe coding. I think that's just the way to code now,
Right.
is doing what people had been doing previously, known as vibe coding. With vibe operating, I think it's embracing this idea of augmenting our network and our infrastructure and our server and our storage and our cloud and our security teams with the right modern tools, so they can use natural language, so they can build agents to do the thing for them.
So John, let me dig into something here really quickly. Production, at least good production practice, is highly deterministic, and AI by its nature is probabilistic. And that's not just a mismatch, that's like a marriage counseling session, okay? So taking these AI systems and plugging them in and having them be responsible for deterministic performance in production, how do we ensure that it's accurate? How do we ensure that it stays, within the guardrails and also doesn't do things that surprise us?
So it's something I'm very conscious of. We had a customer mention that, if they do 1 million activities a day on the network agentically, even a 2% failure rate is a lot of failures, right? That's not acceptable. So it is the challenge, right? So let's not underestimate what we're trying to tackle here. That is the challenge with AI. But I think how we build the agent is really the solution here, and not just relying on my prompt and the model, however good the model is, alone. I think it is a matter of plugging in access to external information. That could be RAG systems, could be PDFs, it could be your corporate knowledge base, your corporate guidelines, your internal best practices, your change regulations, everything that you can provide, just like a human you would normally train. And I also would take the 6 to 8 weeks to onboard the agent that you normally would take with a human. Make sure it understands all of your corporate policies. Try to simulate the training. Try to augment it with a personality before you start augmenting it to do technical things, right? So give it its persona as a good corporate citizen with as much external information as you can, and then look at the technical tools that are available. There are over 17,000 MCPs out in the wild. Of those, there's probably 5,000 that are very valuable and very good. Almost every new, either existing platforms are trying to retrofit and introduce MCP, or net new services are trying to be MCP first. It's not long before, like F5 has an amazing MCP system that you can just chat with your load balancers through natural language. Like that is a dramatic advantage to people who want to build agents and move away from deterministic workflows. So it's about the tools, it's about the knowledge, it's about the RAG, it's about the skills you provide it. But there's also the path, right? I think that you want to have human in the loop first, and maybe start with read-only activities. Now, these are still very valuable things. Like, I'm not trying to say start small. Have it fully test your deployment, fully test your network, fully document your network, do compliance checks, do audits. right? Get it involved in a read-only capacity with humans in the loop where you permit it to do things. Move to human on the loop, sort of more maintaining and operating and watching, and it sort of has its own autonomy. It's a completely human in the lead, where you're
Okay.
just leading this thing and it has autonomous agency to do things on your infrastructure. I think that's sort of the arcing journey that we want to go through. And risk will go up as you trust it more, as you train it better, as you put it through its paces. But I would start with very safe, lab only, read only, be very prudent, treat it like any other technology that you normally would go through, put it through all its paces, invite your security teams to be involved, get your infrastructure folks involved, you know?
Don't give
there
Clippy
are
root access day one, in other words.
Right.
What?
Right.
No, there's so one of the things that we've been tracking, right, is people's comfort level with AI executing anything automatically in the context of production. Things like, will you let it auto scale your application? Like, okay, so people are getting very comfortable with that. Well, they should, because it's a very well understood pattern that's been established. We've been doing it with, regular old automation for quite some time. So they're like, yeah, AI could do that for me. Can you auto inject rules to mitigate 0-day vulnerabilities? Yeah, we'd kind of like it to do that. But there are other things where it's like, yeah, we're not as comfortable now that we've actually seen this stuff running. So like last year, it was like a huge percentage, like 80% of people across the board were like, yeah, we'll let AI do anything it wants in our data center. This year, it's like, not so much. It dropped dramatically, partly because they've started actually employing it. And I think what we'll see with agents and VibeOps, or, whatever we want to call it, is the same progression we've seen with automation. We wrote scripts, but a human initiated it, period.
Mhm.
And then eventually that moved to, oh, we've got data churning and systems that tell us to automatically execute a given script. And then they moved to that. And so VibeOps is kind of that next progression, like it marries the two. Oh, I have the data. I saw this signal. I'm going to go do this thing because I know that's, if this, then that kind of advanced automation. So I think that's the progression people are most comfortable with, primarily because the agent is not accountable. There has to be an intern somewhere for you to scapegoat when something goes wrong, right? Uh, agents touching BGP routes, probably a bad idea,
Mm.
right? Because if it goes wrong, what are you going to do? Well, our AI went crazy. Well, it's that,
Yeah.
right? I think it's a cautious adoption. People are excited by it. They want it and they like what you're saying, but they're also a little bit, wary of, well, but who's going to get the blame? I wrote the script. Is it my fault? Is it the person who's
Yeah.
accountable, basically? I think
Right.
yeah.
But I think what you're describing is more of a human resources issue than a technology issue, right? Like I think
Well,
Jensen
yeah.
Huang said a year ago that the future of the IT department is an HR department for agents. Now he's kind of laughed at and
Wow.
they sort of treated it as a bit of a joke. However, flash forward 18 months after he said that, and now that there's 1.5 million Claude bots out there in the world, don't they need orchestration? Don't they need a platform to run
Mhm.
on? Don't they need governance? Don't they need RBAC? Don't they need AAA? Don't they need a supervisor, let's say? Right? So I think we're going to see little swarms of agents that are very specific, much like human resources. The security agent, the network agent, the cloud agent, the HR agent, the whatever, right? The mix of agents, digital workers, and it becomes a human resources exercise. I know, say, a company of my size, I'm going to say 250 people, just as a guess. If each of us had 5 agents each under our control that we built to help do our job, now we have over 1,000 people that work at the company. It's just that only 1 in 5 are biological beings, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a huge opportunity to augment, and that doesn't mean we're going to offset or stop hiring. I think it just means that as new talent comes on and as people mature through this cycle, that they are going to have agents helping them produce more, right?
Yeah.
I think the expectation level goes up from leadership that our staff is going to get that much more done because we've invested in the tokens and the private access, and we've endorsed artificial intelligence usage. Um, and I know I'm disconnected from reality in many ways. I know that this is, I don't, that's not
Well,
lost on me. That's not lost on me, but, only 1% of people are actually doing this sort of thing, right? Is sort of the statistic, but, it's coming very fast. And, MCP is literally only a year old. RAG is only 2 years old. I don't think people are that as far behind as they think they are. Right? Like
No.
I want this to be a positive,
yeah,
encouraging message, is to go out there and play with this stuff. Get your hands dirty with the technologies and the terminologies that you've heard during this discussion.
definitely. One of
Yeah.
the things I'm going to take away from this discussion is in terms of achieving guardrails. Your advice to kind of train this stuff in non-production, treat it as if you would a brand new intern or a newly onboarded employee, and kind of work through the processes that you use, and formulate your guardrails around the processes that you use. So, one of the ways to provide governance to these systems is to ensure that you have adequate checkpoints built into your workflow. So, for example, if it's going to do actions of class A, that it takes out a ServiceNow ticket to alert its human handlers that it's about to perform these actions, so that you, number one, have a record of what was performed, and number two, have an ability to either add an approve or disallow function alongside that. And the agents can take care of handling those ServiceNow requests or putting in those Jenkins tickets. And so encouraging a construct like that still provides significant control and governance of the actions without necessarily slowing them down.
And it
I
actually
love
is
that.
a perfect use for generative AI is ticket augmentation. When we mentioned ServiceNow, the quality of the data in the ticket, like it would take me, a human, longer to make the ticket of that quality and of that verbosity than it would to fix the problem the ticket was about. But now, because an AI is generating that text and it has context to make it, like, do you know what I mean? Like it actually really is good at doing tickets and emails and Slack
Perfect.
notifications,
Yeah.
because that's really its prime function, is to do generate text and do predictive text, right? So if you use the tool in the right way, there actually is a huge, huge upside to better tickets, to more legible tickets, to better context in your ServiceNow tickets, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it excels. Use it especially where it excels at generative things, right? Whether it's images, diagrams, text, all of that. So, we're moving toward, we're out of time because we talked a lot. What do you want people to take away? If you had one thing you wanted them to walk away from this with, what would it be, John?
You can start right now, and if programming has been your desire, if learning how to code has been your desire, if you're in infrastructure and want to expand your skills, um, you can start for free with Olama, with LM Studio, with Microsoft Foundry. You literally pull a model from the cloud, and now you have free private local AI in your pocket. Or you could spend the $20 a month on Hyperscaler X. I'm not particularly interested in which one you use, but today, after, if you heard this and you're not doing these things, start today, because the train is still relatively close enough to the station that I think you can get on the train, but it's moving fast, relatively speaking. So I want to thank you for having me here today. This has been a really
Yeah.
wonderful and thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
It was great having you, and I love your insights. I love your enthusiasm, right? Being excited about the technology, because you're right, and I think the market sees it. They see the potential. They're very excited about it, but they are cautious. Ergo Joel's right, governance, a little bit of oversight, some control, right? Until we have a good idea how we're going to put agents on a PIP, right, or reprimands from this HR that's coming. Yeah, we kind of have to make sure that we're paying attention, right? Don't It's not time to let them run everything, but it is time to start teaching them how to do that and helping you do that job. So I think that's the takeaway for me. And I'd love to, chat more, but we're out of time. So that is a wrap for Pop Goes the Stack. Subscribe now, because the next collision needs spectators and maybe a cleanup crew.